Welcome back. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. My guest, first guest, of course, if you were with us before the break, Kabunate is political youth activist and GJA Student Journalist of the Year 2018, and social activist and former NUC's General Secretary, Julius Kwame Anthony, is here with us now. Also intimated that he was a former NUC's. So these guys are big men, big men. Anyways, thank you very much, Julius, for joining us. Thank you very much indeed. So we started on with the conversation, and so let me just start off with you. I was asking whether or not indeed you find it problematic, and again, data and science points to the fact that there's a gap to bridge in terms of participation of young people in development, nation development or national development. Now also, whether or not the interest is there at all for the right reasons.
Yeah, I think the interest is there for the right reasons, and I don't know what you mean by the right
I'll come to that too, but you...
I think that the interest is there for the right reason. Everywhere I go, the young people I meet, my colleagues, are highly enthused about the development of this country, and they are striving in whatever capacities they are to contribute meaningfully. The roadblocks there are the challenges that they are facing, challenges of access to the right mentorship, challenges to the right resources, and guidance to be able to do that. Those things are also conversations we can have, but as to if the interest is there and the interest is there for the right reason, it is 100% that there are young people with the right reason. There are a few also with the interests that are not necessarily the right reason, but what we are interested in is the overwhelming majority who believe in the hope of Africa, the hope of Ghana as that black star, and they want to advance it. There's that overwhelming commitment to see Ghana progress among people my generation.
I see. So I have said that the fight against oppression, dominated discussions years ago when we were oppressed by oppressors, the oppressors rule and all that. So again, people stood up against the oppressor. Today, what must that young person possess to be able to fight what problems today? I hope you get where I'm. So there are some problems, and I'm coming to you, Mr. Nati, and then I'll quickly come back to say what skill set must that young person possess in order to deal with what current challenges for which we face on the continent, by extension here in Ghana?
I think the first thing is, most importantly, is to arm yourself. You should be able to invest in reading and researching to, first of all, dig in the problems. Tied to that, it's a technological era, and so you should be able to navigate your way around when it comes to access of information online, because sometimes it's not every information you see is really verifiable or even credible. Still tied to the aspect of investing or arming yourself is which institutions do you contact for data, and more importantly, you need to learn, so then you prepare yourself. When given opportunity, you should be able to make a point, you should be able to proffer solutions and not necessarily summarizing, because it's important to be constructive about things. The other thing is about courage. You really have to have courage to speak truth to power, as you rightly put it. And that's where the incorruptibility comes in, and being able to bury, political ideologies and idiosyncrasies for that material time, to just make sure that issues of development are dispassionately discussed. If you have your individuals who are benefiting, you should be able to say, well, this is wrong. So the second aspect is the incorruptibility.
Okay. Which is the third for you? First, learning. The other is courage, and whether or not you can be incorruptible at all times. So that's your point.
Yes. Then perhaps my last will talk about being responsive to the times. As you rightly put it, every generation or regime perhaps has its major challenge. We must know the pressing challenges and the foremost ones of them that need to be tackled. And more importantly, put the solutions across Because one of the things I've discovered over the years is we make noise, or we chant for opportunities, but when giving, then we tend to go blank.
Okay.
I've always shared the story about having a crunch meeting with the management of one of my former schools, and there you need to put across the solution.
Indeed.
And that was a time that all the preparation I talked about,
Yes.
information, learning, having on your fingertips, the solution to the problems you're talking about, you should be able to bring it out. And also in some political circles, quite sensitive meetings, they tell you that, well, the youth, you guys lack ideas.
Indeed.
It's the same thing that we recycling over and over again. And so thinking outside the box is very much important.
Okay.
So for me, these are the 4 things that come to mind off the cuff in terms of preparation.
I see. A quick Google of, if you like, problems facing the youth in Africa. You're going to be finding things like lack of employment opportunities, failure to succeed in education system, lack of proper information, I doubt. They also say pressures of materialism, lack of affordable housing, negative stereotyping, and all of that. Are these the skill set, or if you like, qualities that you would want to see also in the young person to deal with the current challenges we face?
Well, as Kabu, intelligently articulated, I think capacity building is very necessary, and I would want to put it in 3 phases, looking at the issues we are facing as a country.
Right.
One, the individual must build personal capacity to be able to have the personal discipline, because that's where everything starts from. If you don't have individual discipline to deal with your own internal affairs, it will reflect even if you go into public life or trying to change something publicly. So the individual must master that. The individual must master professional discipline. It is out of that professional capacity building that you could be able to take care of your own domestic affairs. If you don't have any trusted record of professional discipline that you have built, I do not think people should be put into public roles. Then you should now build that political capacity to be able to influence things in the society. That it does not necessarily mean belonging to political party or otherwise. Belonging is fine, not belonging is also fine. It's just about having the capacity and the platform to be able to influence decision making in the policy directions of the country. The reason why we face a lot of the challenges we face today is that we have created a system that does not scrutinize the first 2 stages that I mentioned: the people's personal capacity building individually and their professional capacity building. And we have allowed an easy route into politics. And because we have done that, we have created a society where there's this, we celebrate political achievements without the needed individual and professional capacity backing of the people. And the people get into office, and what are their interests? Their interests are about survivability in the political domain, because there is no other backing. There is nothing else they have other than politics. When that happens, you create a situation where the people's focus is not about development. Because if the person has some professional experience from a certain profession, he's going to be bringing it into leadership. If the person...
No matter how skewed the person is.
Good. The person would bring it into it, but if the person lacks it. So we must create a regime that scrutinizes all these things if we are going to be successful at it. And so young people, when we are going to take over, that must be our focus. As much as you want to influence policy, as much as you want to partake in the governance of the country and all, individual capacity building, professional capacity building, and all those things matter a lot. The reason why they also matter is that if we want people who are incorruptible, if we want people who are very courageous, the only way you can have that is a person being that I have a fallback onto if that other space, which is very unpredictable, where the policy is made among politicians, and they have diverse interests. The person who would want to influence positive change must have a certain assurance within himself that if that space fails me as an individual, there is a fallback for me, for my individual. But if it's a situation where there is no fallback for the person, that person would do anything to remain in that space if it includes compromising on principles, if it includes compromising on the public good, if it includes, I mean, the sacrifice of people's lives. Because what we underestimate the most is the very impact of political decisions and policy choices on the lives of people. When there is mass shooting and there is mass murder, you could easily trace that this person was the one who shot and killed the people. But when political decisions result in death of people, it is hard, it is difficult to trace directly who was responsible. For example, if education policies fail and it leads to a situation where there is mass unemployment, mass incapacitation of the population, which has resulted in the people having a poor standard of living, and it shortens their lifespan or puts them in a situation where they have to go through harmful ways of survival, that political decision, that boardroom that failed, is what is killing them. But we are unable to directly link it to it, so we do not see the real impact of the failures of political decisions or policy decisions. If policy decisions fail to address issues of healthcare, where the poorest of people among us don't have the access to, I mean, state guaranteed universal health coverage for them, except that it is in name. If we have that kind of situation, the people who die out of these failures are being killed by the policymakers who failed in the boardroom. And we fail to identify these things. So, and these people, I mean, people who make these sacrifices, sometimes deliberately, they know that if we reduce the quality of the inputs we make, if we cut corners so that we get something, the impact is loss of lives and all that. But they still make those decisions anyway. It is because in most cases, these people have not gone through some professional and individual discipline, capacity building that informs the kind of things they do.
So you talk about a regime that creates or builds capacity of, if you like, people who are even interested in going into these political offices. Now, again, we're enjoying some two-party states, where NDC, where it's between the NDC and the NPP, who have their ideologies. So there's a school for the NDC, and there's for
the NPP.
I don't of course, that one I'm sure comes from the Dankwa Institute more and all that. Now, at what point would you want us to rely on those schools, or there must be a different regime created by who? Before I go to Mr. Naji.
Yes, I think that regime must be created by anyone who is well-meaning in academia, in law, in politics, in healthcare, everywhere. The point is that we need people who are leadership-oriented regardless of what field they are in.
Okay.
The mistake we make is to assume that leadership of a country means political leadership. It is not. In healthcare, there is leadership. The person who is the managing director, the kind of decisions he takes over there, the kind of discipline he ensures in that field, ensures that some level of functionality within that area, because politicians come and go. The person who is, what do you call it, managing housing, who is there, must ensure there's a certain objective. When a politician comes, that must resonate with him and they move. The person who is managing education and all those things, who is not necessarily a politician, must be a leader oriented in his mindset. It is not only about the political appointees or the political office holders. So what we must do as a people is that in all fields, leadership capacity training must be central, and the direction we want to reach must be central in what we do. So in our classrooms, leadership training must be very essential. And that leadership training must be tied to where we want to reach as a country. It must be tied to a vision that we want to reach as a country. We must all, as a people, be deliberate about the kind of people we churn out to rule over the rest of us. If we are not, and it's a matter of, what do you call it, natural selection or economic determinism, where the person with the bigger purse splashes cash around and gets hold of the establishment and does whatever the hell they like with it, that we are going to keep recycling process. So it is a generational matter. It's not something we can stand up today and I mean, gray men or old people. There's a saying that you can't wait for a dog to, you know, grow and have canines before you start calling it Jack. It won't respond. If you want to call it Jack, you start calling it Jack at the infancy. So it's a generational issue where we must identify that, yes, it's a systemic issue we want to solve from this generation. This is the target we want to reach as a people, and it requires a certain level of discipline in all spheres of our leadership to be able to achieve that. If we don't do that and we leave everything to chance, That is what we are going to cause. We must make people understand that to develop and grow is about developing systems.
I see.
It's not about going to the classroom and labeling the parts of grasshoppers and all that. It's about the systems we develop and the kind of mindset we give to our people.
Okay.
It will affect private sector development. It will affect everything if the mindset is right. That's why